Okay, so this week I'll be doing gate 24. I'm going to talk a little lower because I'm traveling. And this is going to be gate for the channel or the gate of mental solutions. And this particular gate is, you could see it's located on the top over here in the Ajna center of the human design. And like the 47, it's a channel of logic, and it's a collective circuitry, and it's that bottom part out of the ajna center. Now this particular gate is about is problem solving, having the correct solution. Now logic and the intellect can only have a momentary solution for the moment, because as I went over, I think when I did gate 64 or 47, that the intellect is not the end all be all of humanness. It's not the authority in the body. We have all been taught backwards that our mind is everything and that we're to live in our mind. The Western world is very much stuck in its scientism religion, in buying into this idea that we should be living in our minds. And a lot of us do, we manage I should say it like this: we choose to manage our life through our mind, through the solutions or decisions that we make, through worry or anxiety or contemplation around ideas. When in reality, really what we're doing is we're responding from the body's intelligence, from our personal authority, whether that's in the gut or the solar plexus or the spleen or the ego center or the G center or um, really any authority. All our authorities really is just different examples of body authority, which is the intelligence of the body, which can utilize any center, any part of the body in order to gain its intelligence and its responses and its answers. So, what I'm going to do in this transit update is to do a brief summary of all the ways in which we deceive ourselves by utilizing the mind in such a way where we fall victim to the intellect instead of sitting in our body's complete control centers, which are our body's intelligence, and where we utilize our intelligence in such ways where and when that energy is and when and where we are in that energy. Because the problem is us kind of going back to this part of the mind, whether it's open or we have it defined, giving authority to our mental processes, which can never bring us peace, can never really bring us anything lasting. And that essentially is what I want to propel forth today as examples for everyone to take in, that our mental awareness, while powerful, it's not a form of intelligence. Intelligence is something that occurs in the body. Now, this particular gate 4 is about finding solutions. And that is something that our ajna center can do. But that's also by utilizing the intelligence of the body from other areas that eventually will reach into this place of manifestation, the throat center. And it can get there from, all these possibilities, all these mazes of possibilities in our body graph, all these different centers of our endocrine system. And so what it is we're doing is, in a way, the mind can only really exhaust itself to the point where it reaches paradox. And then the body kind of gets flipped back on from the mind and has to make the decision from the intelligence of one's authority. And thus the true knowing comes from those other centers, those authorial centers, and that feelings of knowingness can flood through the body from whether it's the sacral or the solar plexus or the spleen or any other possible authorities. So the gift of understanding is really the true place for the human being. Now the mind is great in the sense that it can do certain things. It can research, it can communicate, it can, use play and fun and be creative in its expression. And it can also be hopeful in a sense of having a kind of mental elasticity in order to play with the world around. But essentially, what we're looking at here in utilizing the intelligence of the mind is to exhaust its logic so we can reach a place where not so much information or logic, but rather a sense of paradox and exhaustion of logic and a kind of end to knowledge. And what it is just a beginning to knowingness. There's something about, and I remember in the work of Robert Schneider, how he talked about when you judge something, you lock it into place. You lock reality into place, and it gets harder to see between the shadows of the third density seeming world. And so there's something about letting go of judgment where the elasticity of the mind is opened up and one can perceive, like perception increases that 1,000-fold when you can just perceive things as they are instead of attempting to judge them or put them in their places or even attempting to put your life in its place. All of that is, anxiety is something that is anticipation of the future. That's what anxiety is. And that's why many of us attempt to use our mind constructs to protect us from the future, or the next day, or the reality that is ahead of us. But really, that's just nothing but fear, kind of playing gymnastics in our mind, attempting to protect ourselves from something that has not yet happened. I remember there was a quote in Dune, the first Dune book, that was about how all divination is just fear, fear of the future, fear of the unknown. And, while I practice divination myself in the sense of especially astrology, horary readings, I do understand that it's important, has its place, especially in such cursed times as we live in presently, 2025 being a very, very strange, erratic, and chaotic year. But regardless, the point that I'm attempting to make here is that there's a way to dissolve these kind of constraints and structures that the mind attempts to build over our reality so that we can't fully feel it or experience it, but rather kind of anesthetize it and can attempt to contain it, attempt to secure it for ourselves. But as I always like to say, the mind cannot contain the day. And this means that despite all our efforts, we're always going to be frustrated. Life is something that occurs to us. The intelligence of the body responds to life, not our minds. Our minds reel back and forth to understand what has just occurred, what is happening. And that is why we hone our perception. That's why we hone our instincts through practice, through study, through practices that help us remain in our body. And like I guess the best example is like Tai Chi. Tai Chi is always the best example because it's a very slow moving practice. And you just move the energy throughout your body. You move the energy. And yet just by studying Tai Chi for many years, your body would utilize those movements to protect itself if it needed to. Meaning to say, the body learns through the day to day. And the truth of life is the truth of the day to day. That's where the gold is. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. There's no shortcut to that. As human beings, we can only live day to day. We need sleep. We need rest. We need to, I mean, the truth of it is gradual accomplishments. That's the real truth of life. I mean, this is, of course, especially for the generators. The day to day, the gradual growth, the steady and solid and follow through. The other types might experience it a little different, but just like us, we all go to sleep at night and wake up in the morning. So there's a certain pattern to our awareness. There's a certain pattern to how our awareness grows. And eventually this comes to an awareness of certain truths. And it takes me back to what I was saying about when you judge something, it locks a reality into place. But the truth of it is that there's something more powerful that opens up that lock. And it has to do with allowance. I like the word allowance in the sense that you just allow reality to be what it is. And you allow things to be as they are. You don't apologize for it. You don't excuse it. You don't judge it. You don't condemn it. But you allow everything to be as is. And in essence, that's a type of forgiveness. That's a type of giving back people's energy to them and you keeping your own energy or pulling it back to you. Because essentially that's all forgiveness is, to forgive other people their energy back and to take back yours. And forgiveness is something that can be very difficult if one locks on to frequencies that they're attached to. This is why it's important to be careful of attaching too much thought to things that happen in the everyday world. And this is why it's good to that when emotional things occur to clear it as soon as possible. Because otherwise the mind can build it up. And in following, the mind will build up a judgment towards it. And it'll lock a reality into place. And then it'll be difficult to recapitulate the emotion because it's been charged up by one's thoughts. And so that's why I'm forgetting the name of the author, but there's a book called Getting to Zero. And it's all about in human relationships how it's important to get back to zero once there's emotional charges that get put into the body through emotional expression or interaction. And it's a relationship resolving book, and it's about getting back to zero as soon as possible, right? Relinquishing the charge, not holding on to the energy. Neither partner, but working through it and getting back to zero, zero charge in the body. That's what it is. And really, what I'm talking about here is the grace of forgiveness, which is a phenomenon that kind of overrides any sense of karma or the idea of karma, in the sense that we're in bodies experiencing these incarnations until we clear our karma, is usually the idea we hear. But really, it's just something deeper than that. And it comes to a point of that to express that truth is just something that's outside of the scope of the mind. And what I mean by that is if we're living from the intelligence of our body, the mind is not building and attaching and creating charges in the body because we're living from the intelligence of the moment to moment, of the day to day. And that's really what Gate 4 is about. It's about reaching, those who have this gate, you're going to be good at coming up with solutions, logical solutions, but those are only going to last for a time. And in time, deeper solutions will have to be found that penetrate past the intellect into the body's intelligence. And so this gate will be active from August 11th to the 16th. Now, this is kind of a moment of reprieve in a very chaotic month because on August 11th, we have Mercury going direct and we have Jupiter conjuncting Venus. So, this is a nice little pocket of the month, this August 11th to the 16th. And so, challenges will be met with solutions. It is a time to allow the solutions to come forth if one needs them. You can see in this transit graph that there are no centers defined, but they will be defined by your own gates. So these transits will complete centers. I can already see several centers that are going to be complete for me. Some that I usually have undefined. And that's what it is. Now there's other aspects to this, but mainly what I went over is pretty much enough. I mean, those who have this gate, they are gonna be prone to reactive or repressed expressions of this energy. Those who repress it may be stuck in their own kind of silent isolation away from others, unable to really communicate the depth of their kind of awareness. And those who are reactive, they might be a little more expressive with these patterns and a little more in other people's faces with what they think the solution really is. Just looking through my notes to see if there's anything else I haven't added. Some other interesting things I noted here is that the name of this gate in the I Ching is youthful folly. And it has to do with being tangled up in emotions. Ironic because it's not seemingly an emotional gate or connected to an emotional channel. It's actually a gate of channel of logic, the 63-4. But therein lies in this a certain chaos, especially when overguided by the mind. So we're looking with this specific gate to overcome rhythmic patterns that remain trapped in logic and overthinking. And so we're talking about not allowing one to get trapped in their own logic, their own tautologies, their own circular thinking or delusions in the form of convictions or certainties. Because this is really the trap of the mind. And in many ways, for humans, one of our key challenges is to overcome this kind of obsession with identifying ourselves as minds. Because that's not what humans are. Our whole field, our whole bioenergetic field is our mind. It's our intelligence, it's our energy. That's what we are. The mind is just not some little space in our heads. We are all mind. All the body can experience intelligence and awareness. And the problem with logic is, as I said, anyone can prove anything or disprove anything. The mind is something circular. It cannot step outside of its own circle, cannot see itself. The intellect is always born by the shadow of the inquirer himself or herself. The mind can never reassure us of anything. Only nature can. And so the only way we can really find the true space of calm and beingness is through the body. Nothing we say to ourselves is going to ultimately keep us reassured. Although, if there's certain principles that we express to ourselves every day, or certain protections that we say, that we utter out loud, that's very powerful for the spirit. And that actually works and is very helpful. The point being here that ultimately understanding is in the body's awareness and intelligence, not in the mind. So while the mind helps us find the momentary solutions, and that is valuable, it's just important to remember on these particular days, August 11th to the 16th, that while we find mental solutions to things, it also is important to allow those solutions to come forth from whatever intelligence they may come forth from, and not attach to them, not build them up or overcharge the energy. Because when we don't overcharge the energy, we can allow things to be as they are, and thus all can be forgiven. Hope that was helpful to you all. Take care.